The new waitress found a postcard no one was supposed to see. A hidden name on the Mafia boss's wife's bracelet. A photo. A couple everyone feared, now begging for her help. Their goddaughter had vanished 3 years ago, leaving breadcrumbs only a stranger could follow. The thing about working at Maria Blue was simple. Avoid table 12, and you'd keep your job. Sarah, the head waitress who'd been there 6 years, had warned me on my first day. The DeLucas own this place. They come in every Thursday at 7. You smile, you're invisible, and you never, ever ask them personal questions. What happens if you do? I'd asked. Sarah's face had gone pale. Jenny asked Mrs. DeLuca if she liked her pasta once. Just making conversation. She was fired before dessert was served. Now, 3 weeks into my new life in Newport, Rhode Island, I was about to break every unspoken rule. It wasn't intentional. Table 12 was in my section, and I'd already served the DeLucas their appetizers without incident. Marco DeLuca had barely glanced at me, a man in his early 50s with steel-gray eyes and the kind of presence that made the air feel thicker around him. His wife, Gianna, was different. She watched everything with sharp, calculating eyes, her dark hair pulled back, so tight it looked painful. I'd heard the rumors, of course. Everyone in Newport had. Marco DeLuca wasn't just a restaurant owner. His family name appeared in whispered conversations about waterfront construction deals, union negotiations that went suspiciously smooth, and city council members who suddenly changed their votes. Nobody said the word mafia out loud, but it hung in the air like cigarette smoke. "Your sea base, ma'am," I said, setting the plate down in front of Gianna with steady hands. That's when I saw it. Her wrist, a gold bracelet, delicate, expensive, caught the candlelight as she reached for her wine glass. But it was the way she moved that stopped me cold. Her fingers brushed the bracelet surface, and for just a second, she rotated it. There, hidden on the inside, was an engraving I shouldn't have been able to see. A name, Alessia. And beneath it, a tiny photo pressed under glass, a young woman with dark curls and a bright smile. Gianna's eyes snapped up to meet mine. She knew I'd seen it. "Is there something wrong?" Her voice was ice.
"No, ma'am."
"Enjoy your meal." I retreated so fast, I nearly knocked into a busboy. My heart hammered as I ducked into the kitchen. It was nothing, just a bracelet. Maybe Alessia was her daughter, her sister, someone she loved. But the look on Gianna's face, that flash of vulnerability before the mask came back, told me it was more than that. It was a secret. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I kept my distance from table 12, let Sarah deliver their dessert. When the DeLucas finally left, Marco's hand gentle on Gianna's back, her expression unreadable, I released a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "Good job not getting fired," Sarah said, counting tips at the server station. "Yeah," I muttered. But I couldn't shake the image of that bracelet, the way Gianna had touched it like it was the only thing tethering her to something real. At midnight, I was alone in the restaurant, doing the closing checklist. That's when I found it. In the lost and found box near the hostess stand, buried under forgotten sunglasses and a child's toy car, was a postcard. The image showed the Newport Cliff Walk at sunset, touristy, unremarkable. But when I flipped it over, my stomach dropped. The postcard was blank. No message, no address. Just a photo tucked into the corner, held with a paperclip. A photo of a young woman with dark curls and a bright smile. The same woman from Gianna's bracelet. My hands trembled as I pulled the photo free. On the back, someone had written in small, careful letters, "Still here. Still safe." Alessia. I should have put it back. Should have pretended I never saw it. But something in my gut, maybe the same instinct that had made me leave Boston and my controlling ex-boyfriend 2 months ago, told me this wasn't just a coincidence. Someone had dropped this postcard in the restaurant recently. Someone who knew the DeLucas. Someone who wanted to send a message. Or someone who was running. I slipped the postcard into my apron pocket and finished closing. The entire walk back to my tiny apartment, I debated what to do. This wasn't my business. These weren't my people. I was a waitress trying to rebuild my life, not a detective. But I kept thinking about Gianna's face. That brief moment when the mask slipped and I saw something raw underneath.
Grief.
Or maybe hope. By the time I reached my apartment, I'd made my decision. The next morning, I called the restaurant. Is Mr. DeLuca there? I need to speak with him. It's personal. Tell him it's about Alessia. There was a long pause on the other end. Then, he'll see you at 10. Come to the private office entrance. Don't be late. I hung up, my heart racing. I had no idea what I was walking into. No idea if this would help or destroy me. But as I looked at that photo again, at the young woman who'd signed her initial and nothing more, I knew I couldn't ignore it. Someone was hiding. Someone was searching. And I just put myself in the middle of it all. The private office entrance was hidden behind the restaurant's wine cellar, down a narrow hallway I'd never noticed before. I knocked twice, my knuckles barely making a sound against the heavy oak door. It opened immediately. Marco DeLuca stood there, filling the doorframe. Up close, he was even more intimidating, 6'3", dressed in a perfectly tailored suit that probably cost more than my entire year's rent. But it was his eyes that caught me off guard. They weren't cold or threatening. They were desperate. Come in, Miss Hayes, he knew my name.
Of course he did.
The office was nothing like I expected. Instead of dark wood and cigar smoke, it was bright and warm, cream-colored walls covered with family photos, a mahogany desk cluttered with papers, and 2 leather chairs facing a small sofa. Gianna sat on the sofa, her hands folded in her lap, that gold bracelet catching the morning light. She looked like she hadn't slept. You said you found something, Marco said, closing the door behind me. About Alessia. I pulled a postcard from my bag, with shaking hands. I found this in the Lost and Found last night. I thought you should see it. Gianna took it first. The moment she saw the photo, her composure shattered. Her hand flew to her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. Marco moved to her side instantly, his arm around her shoulders, and I saw something I never expected from a man like him. Tenderness. Where did you find this? His voice was rough. In the box by the hostess stand. Someone must have dropped it yesterday evening. Maybe during the dinner rush, I hesitated. I saw your bracelet last night, Mrs. DeLuca. The name. The photo. They match. Gianna wiped her eyes, her mask trying to rebuild itself. But it was too late. I'd seen the truth underneath. You must think we're terrible people, she whispered. I think you're people who are missing someone. Marco exchanged a glance with his wife, then gestured for me to sit. Alessia is my goddaughter. Her parents, my best friend and his wife, died in a car accident when she was 16. I raised her, loved her like she was my own. She was brilliant, Gianna added softly. Top of her class, full scholarship to Brown University. She wanted to be an architect, to design buildings that would outlive all of us, her voice cracked. 3 years ago, she disappeared. No note, no explanation. Just
Gone.
I felt my chest tighten. Did something happen? Did someone hurt her? That's what I thought at first, Marco said, his jaw clenching. I used every resource I had. Private investigators, contacts in every state, people who owed me favors. Nothing. It was like she vanished into thin air. But then I started finding things. Gianna interrupted. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small envelope. Inside were fragments, a torn corner of a sketch with Alessia's initials, a receipt from a bookstore in Providence dated 6 months ago, a single earring left on the restaurant's windowsill. Clues, I breathed. Breadcrumbs, Gianna corrected. She's been leaving them, but so carefully that only someone looking would notice. I've been collecting them for 8 months, and she looked at Marco, guilt written across her face. I didn't tell him. I couldn't. What if I was wrong? What if I got his hopes up and it led nowhere? The tension between them was thick enough to cut. Marco's voice was quiet, hurt. You should have told me. I was protecting you. I didn't need protection. I needed my partner. I cleared my throat, feeling like an intruder in their private pain. The postcard. There's something else. I pointed to the postmark. It was mailed from Boston 3 days ago. But the photo shows the Newport Cliff Walk. She was here. Recently. Marco stood abruptly, pacing. Why would she come here and not reach out? Why this game? Maybe she's scared, I offered. Or maybe she's not ready yet. Gianna studied me with those sharp eyes. Why are you helping us? You don't know us. For all you know, we could be exactly what people say we are. I thought about my own reasons for running to Newport. The boyfriend who'd isolated me from friends, monitored my phone, made me feel like I was losing my mind. The night I'd finally left, throwing clothes in a bag while he was at work, my hands shaking so hard I could barely zip it closed. Because someone who leaves clues wants to be found eventually, I said. They're just not ready yet. And that I understand. Something shifted in the room. Gianna's expression softened. Marco stopped pacing. There's writing on the back of the photo, Gianna said suddenly, flipping it over. Still here. Still safe. She looked up at her husband. Safe. Marco, she says she's safe. But from what? His voice broke on the last word. I stood, feeling the weight of what I was about to propose. The postmark.
Boston.
That's where the trail starts. We could. I stopped myself. You could go there. See if anyone remembers her. Track where she mailed it from. Marco and Gianna looked at each other, having an entire conversation without words. Finally, Marco turned to me. How soon can you get time off work? What? You found her trail when we couldn't. You see details we miss. He crossed his arms. And maybe she'll trust someone who isn't us. Someone new. I can't just. I'll pay you triple your monthly salary, Marco said.
Plus expense.
And if Sarah gives you trouble, I'll handle it. My logical brain screamed to refuse. But something deeper, that same instinct that made me pick up the postcard, pushed me forward. When do we leave? Gianna smiled for the first time since I'd entered the room. Pack a bag, Miss Hayes. We're taking the 11 o'clock train to Boston. The Amtrak Northeast Regional was half empty on a Friday morning. I'd managed to throw together a duffel bag in 40 minutes. Clothes, toiletries, my phone charger, and the postcard sealed in a plastic sleeve like evidence. Now I sat across from Marco and Gianna in a private compartment, watching the Rhode Island coastline blur past the window. Nobody had spoken in 20 minutes. Gianna stared at the postcard, turning it over and over in her hands. Marco watched the scenery with unseeing eyes, his jaw tight. The silence felt suffocating. Tell me about her, I said finally. About Alessia. Marco's eyes shifted to me, surprised. Why? Because if we're going to find her, I need to understand who she is. Not just the clues she's leaving, the person behind them. Gianna set the postcard down gently. She was stubborn. God, was she stubborn? A sad smile crossed her face. When she was 17, she wanted to redesign our restaurant's patio. Said the layout was inefficient, that customers felt cramped. Marco told her no, we'd just renovated. She drew up plans anyway, Marco continued, his voice softening. Presented them to me like a business proposal. Showed me customer flow patterns, psychological studies about dining comfort. She was 17 and citing research papers. You changed the patio, I guessed. Every detail she suggested, Marco's hands clenched on his knees. Because she was right. She was always right. Brilliant, determined, and completely fearless. Until she wasn't, Gianna said quietly. The train rocked gently. Marco leaned back, his eyes closing briefly. Her senior year at Brown, something changed. She became distant. Stopped coming home for dinners, dodged phone calls. I thought it was normal, young adult pulling away, finding independence. But then... She asked you a question, Gianna interrupted, looking at her husband. The night before she disappeared. Marco's face went pale. Even 3 years later, the memory clearly haunted him. What did she ask? I pressed gently. She asked if I was proud of her. His voice was barely a whisper. If I thought she'd accomplished anything on her own, or if everything she had was because of my name, because of who I was. The compartment fell silent except for the rhythmic clack of wheels on tracks. I told her she was being ridiculous, Marco continued, his voice breaking. That she'd earned everything through her own merit, her own brilliance. I told her she was overthinking. He looked at me, and I saw the crushing weight of regret. I didn't ask why she was questioning it. Didn't dig deeper. I just dismissed her. The next morning, she was gone. Gianna finished. Apartment cleared out. Phone disconnected. Bank account closed. Like she'd planned it meticulously. I absorbed this. Puzzle pieces clicking together. She didn't run from danger. She ran from your shadow. Marco flinched like I'd struck him. That's what I've suspected, Gianna admitted. Every clue she leaves, they're intentional but vague. Like she wants us to know she's alive without revealing where she is. She's not ready to come back. But why leave clues at all? I asked. Because she still loves us, Marco said, his voice thick. She just doesn't know how to be herself and be our daughter at the same time. I thought about my own escape from Boston 2 months ago. How I needed to disappear completely to remember who I was before Jake had molded me into his version of a perfect girlfriend. How even now, I sometimes caught myself asking permission for things that needed no permission. Freedom can be lonely, I said. Maybe the clues are her way of staying connected while figuring out who she is. Gianna reached across and squeezed my hand. Thank you for understanding. The train began slowing. Through the window, Boston's skyline emerged, glass towers reflecting the afternoon sun. My stomach nodded. This was my old city, the place I'd fled. Coming back, even for someone else's search, felt like tempting fate. The postmark, Marco said, pulling out his phone with a photo he'd taken of the postcard. It's from a South End post office. That's our starting point. Alessia loved the South End, Gianna added. When she was at Brown, she'd take the train down on weekends just to walk around, sketch buildings. Said it had the best architecture in New England. The train pulled into South Station. As we gathered our bags, Marco turned to me. Miss Hayes. Mira, I interrupted. If we're doing this together, call me Mira. He nodded.
Mira.
I need you to understand something. I've spent 3 years blaming myself, wondering if my reputation, my past, my choices drove her away. This search, it might not end the way we hope. I know. And if we find her, and she doesn't want to see us, his voice cracked. Then at least you'll know she's truly safe, I finished. And that she knows you never stopped looking. Gianna stood, shouldering her bag with renewed determination. The South End post office closes at 6. We have 4 hours. As we stepped onto the platform, Boston's familiar sounds washed over me, car horns, distant sirens, the subway rumbling beneath our feet. I'd sworn I'd never come back to this city. But maybe, I thought, watching Marco and Gianna walk ahead of me with their hands clasped tight, some returns were worth the risk. The hunt for Alessia had begun. The South End post office was a brick building wedged between a yoga studio and an artisan coffee shop. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed over a line of tired customers clutching packages. Marco approached the counter with the kind of confidence that made people instinctively step aside. I need to speak with whoever was working 3 days ago, he told the clerk, a middle-aged woman with reading glasses hanging from a beaded chain. She barely looked up. Privacy regulations. You can't give out employee schedules. Marco slid a $100 bill across the counter. Her eyes flicked to the money, then to his face. Something there made her pause. Not fear exactly, but recognition. She pocketed the bill smoothly. Jerry worked Tuesday morning. He's at the SOA market now. Sells vintage postcards. Red tent. 5 minutes later, we were walking through the SOA open market, an outdoor maze of art vendors, food trucks, and craft booths. The smell of kettle corn mixed with incense. A street musician played saxophone nearby, the notes melancholy and sweet. There, Gianna pointed. The red tent was small, crammed with wooden crates full of postcards organized by decade. An older man with white hair and weathered hands sorted through a new batch, pricing them with a label gun. His name tag read Jerry. "Excuse me," I said, approaching before Marco could. Something told me this needed a softer touch. "We're looking for someone. A young woman who might have bought postcards here earlier this week." Jerry didn't look up. "I sell to lots of people." I pulled out my phone, showing him the photo from the postcard. "Her name is Alessia. Dark curly hair, mid-20s. She would have mailed something from the post office right after." He squinted at the screen, then his expression shifted.
Oh.
"Her. Yeah, I remember." My heart jumped. "You do." Hard to forget. She spent 20 minutes looking through my vintage Boston collection. Very particular. Kept asking about architecture postcards from the 70s and 80s. He set down his label gun. Sweet girl. Talked about building design like it was poetry. Gianna stepped forward, her voice trembling. What else did she say? Jerry studied her, then Marco, sizing them up. She asked about New York. Wanted to know if I had any postcards from Brooklyn, specifically the Dumbo neighborhood. Said she was thinking of going there next. Mentioned something about an art restoration studio. Brooklyn, Marco repeated, his jaw tightening. Did she say which studio? No, but Jerry reached under his table, pulling out a battered shoebox. She left this behind. I was going to mail it to Lost and Found, but I didn't have an address. He handed it to Gianna. Inside was a sketchbook. Small, leather-bound, filled with pencil drawings. My breath caught as Gianna flipped through the pages. Every sketch was a building, brownstones, churches, warehouses, each one rendered with obsessive detail. But it was the last page that made Gianna gasp. A self-portrait. Alessia had drawn herself standing in front of a half-finished building, her hair pulled back, charcoal smudged on her hands. At the bottom, she'd written, "Who am I when I build something of my own?" Marco took the sketchbook with shaking hands. She always drew in these. Since she was a kid, his thumb traced the edge of the page. I gave her the first one for her 10th birthday. "Look at the building behind her," I said, pointing to the sketch. "It's not finished. But there, on the cornerstone, there's text." Gianna pulled out reading glasses, squinting at the tiny letters. Dumbo.
Arts. Center? No, wait.
Atlantic. Atlantic Arts Restoration. That's in Brooklyn, Jerry confirmed. Heard of it. They specialize in fixing up old murals, architectural details from historic buildings. Real prestigious. Marco was already on his phone, searching. Found it. Atlantic Arts Restoration, Water Street, Brooklyn. They're open until 7-inch. He looked at his watch. If we catch the next train, we can make it. Wait, I said. Something about this felt off. She left the sketchbook on purpose. They both stared at me. Think about it. She's been so careful with every clue. Breadcrumbs that only you would recognize. But a whole sketchbook? With a self-portrait and the studio name practically spelled out. I shook my head. She wanted you to find this. She's ready for you to get closer. Or it's a test, Gianna said softly. To see if we're really looking. If we care enough to follow. Marco's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his face went pale. It's a text from an unknown number. His voice was hoarse as he read aloud. You're getting warmer. But are you ready for the truth? The market sounds faded into background noise. Alessia was watching. She knew we were searching. And she was leading us forward, but to what? She sent that just now, Gianna whispered. She's here. In Boston. She saw us. We all turned, scanning the crowd. Hundreds of faces. Any one of them could be her. A woman in sunglasses near the jewelry booth. A figure in a hoodie by the food trucks. Someone watching from across the street. Alessia. Marco's voice cracked as he shouted. Alessia, please. But the crowd kept moving, indifferent. If she was there, She didn't reveal herself. Jerry cleared his throat uncomfortably. You folks okay? Marco composed himself, though his hands still trembled. Thank you. For keeping the sketchbook safe, he pulled out several bills, pressing them into Jerry's hand. As we walked back toward the train station, the sketchbook clutched in Gianna's arms like a precious child. None of us spoke. The text message had changed everything. Alessia wasn't just leaving clues anymore. She was watching us chase them. The Atlantic Arts Restoration Studio occupied the ground floor of a converted warehouse in Dumbo, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the East River. Through the glass, I could see people in white coats carefully working on what looked like fragments of old building facades, terracotta angels, limestone cornices, pieces of New York's architectural history. Marco pushed through the door first, a bell chiming overhead. A woman in her 40s looked up from a reception desk cluttered with paint samples and restoration catalogs. We're closing in 20 minutes, she said pleasantly. We're looking for someone who worked here, Gianna said, pulling out her phone to show Alessia's photo. Her name is Alessia. She would have been here a few weeks ago, maybe longer. Please, it's urgent. The woman's expression shifted, recognition, then something like pity. You're her family. The air left my lungs. You know her? I'm Diana Chun, the studio director. Alessia worked here for 6 weeks. She was brilliant, had an instinct for restoration work that usually takes years to develop. Diana stood, gesturing toward the back of the studio. She helped us restore a marble frieze from the old Penn Station. The attention to detail was extraordinary. Where is she now? Marco's voice was strained, fighting to stay controlled. Diana's face fell.
She left.
3 weeks ago, suddenly. I came in one morning and found her tools cleaned and organized, her workstation cleared out. No resignation letter, just she walked to a filing cabinet and pulled out an envelope. This. Gianna took it with trembling hands. Inside was a single piece of paper with Alessia's handwriting. Thank you for giving me the chance to build something with my own hands. I'm sorry I can't stay. I'm not ready yet. Please forgive me. Marco read it over Gianna's shoulder, his face contorting with pain. Not ready. She keeps saying that. Not ready for what? Did something happen? I asked Diana. Did someone threaten her? Was she scared? Not scared, shaken, Diana corrected. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through messages. The day before she left, she got a phone call during her lunch break. I was in the courtyard with her. She went pale, started crying. Whoever it was, they said something that broke her. Who called? Gianna demanded. I don't know. But after she hung up, she looked at me and said, They found me. They'll always find me. Diana's voice softened. I asked who they were. She just shook her head and said, People who love me too much to let me go. The words hit Marco like a physical blow. He turned away, his shoulders rigid. She wasn't running from danger, I said quietly. She was running from you. We gave her everything. Marco's voice broke. Everything she ever needed. How is that? How is love a cage? Diana stepped forward carefully. Mr. DeLuca, I don't know your story. But I know Alessia. In the time she worked here, she talked about architecture, about creating something permanent, something that would last beyond herself. She never mentioned family, never talked about her past. It was like she was trying to become someone new. Did she say where she was going? Gianna asked, her voice barely above a whisper.
No.
But the morning I found her resignation, there was something else. Diana led us to a workbench in the back corner. On it sat a small wooden box, the kind used for storing restoration tools. She left this for me to find. Said if anyone came looking, I should show them. Inside the box was another sketch, this one of a lighthouse perched on rocky cliffs, waves crashing against the shore. At the bottom, Alessia had written coordinates, 410,369 degrees north, 736,327 degrees west. That's Connecticut, Marco said immediately, pulling out his phone to map it. Somewhere on the coast. Near, his breath caught. Mystic. She loved Mystic, Gianna whispered. When she was 14, we took her there for a weekend. She said it was the most peaceful place she'd ever been. Drew pictures of the seaport for weeks afterward. I studied the lighthouse sketch. Something about it nagged at me. This drawing is different from the others. Look at the detail. It's rougher, quicker. Like she drew it from memory, not observation. What does that mean? Marco asked. It means she might not be there anymore. She's sending you somewhere meaningful, but maybe not her current location. I pointed to the date in the corner of the sketch. This is dated 2 weeks ago. She could be anywhere by now. Diana cleared her throat. There's one more thing. The day of that phone call, I overheard part of her conversation. She said something like, I need more time. Please understand. I have to know who I am without your name first, she looked at Marco directly. Whoever called her wasn't threatening her. They were pleading with her to come home. The implication hung in the air. Marco pulled out his phone, scrolling through his recent calls. I called her old number 2 weeks ago. Left a voicemail. Said we missed her. That we were still looking, his voice cracked. Did my call make her run again? Marco, you couldn't have known, Gianna started. I pushed her further away. He slammed his fist against the workbench, making tools rattle. Every move we make, every step closer we get, she runs. We're not helping. We're hunting her. No, I said firmly. She left this box. She wanted Diana to show it to whoever came looking. If she truly wanted to disappear, she wouldn't leave breadcrumbs. She's testing something. Testing what? Gianna asked. Whether you'll respect her boundaries, whether you'll keep chasing, or whether you'll trust her to come back when she's ready. Marco looked at me, anguish written across his face. And what if she's never ready? No one had an answer. The hotel room in Brooklyn was modest, 2 queen beds, a small table by the window overlooking the bridge lights reflecting on the East River. Marco had insisted we regroup before driving to Connecticut in the morning. But now, at nearly midnight, none of us had slept. I sat on my bed, pretending to scroll through my phone while Marco and Gianna's argument escalated in harsh whispers by the window. You should have told me about the clues months ago, Marco said, his voice tight with controlled anger. 8 months, Gianna. You kept this from me for 8 months. Because I knew you'd do exactly this. Gianna shot back, her composure finally cracking. Charge forward like you can fix everything with enough determination and resources. That's not what she needs. Oh, and you know what she needs? You, who let her suffer alone for 3 years without lifting a finger. I was giving her space. Space. Marco's voice rose. She's been leaving clues because she's desperate for us to find her, and you wanted to give her space.
No, Marco.
She's leaving clues because she's torn. Part of her wants to come home, but another part, the part that needs to exist without your shadow, is terrified of losing herself again. The words hung between them like shattered glass. Marco turned away, bracing his hands against the window. His reflection in the dark glass looked broken. My shadow. As if loving her, raising her, giving her every opportunity was some kind of curse. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? He spun around. Tell me, Gianna. Because from where I stand, I spent 20 years trying to be a father to a girl who lost everything, and apparently all I did was suffocate her. Gianna's eyes filled with tears. You gave her everything except the one thing she needed most, which was permission to fail. Gianna's voice broke. Permission to be ordinary. Permission to figure out who she was without the DeLuca name protecting her from every hardship. Marco staggered back like he'd been struck. I was protecting her. After what happened to her parents, I couldn't let anything hurt her again. I know, Gianna whispered. But love can become a cage, Marco. Even when it's pure. Even when it's everything you have. I couldn't stay silent anymore. Stop. They both turned to me, seeming to remember I was there. I stood, my own emotions rising. You want to know what I see? I see 2 people who love someone so much they're tearing each other apart because they can't fix her pain. But here's the thing, you can't fix it. That's not your job anymore. Mira, Marco started. No, listen, I thought of Jake, of how his love had felt like protection at first, then control, then imprisonment. When I left Boston 2 months ago, I didn't leave because my boyfriend was cruel. I left because he loved me so much he couldn't let me be anything except what he needed me to be. Every decision, every friend, every dream I had, he shaped it all because he thought he was protecting me. Gianna sank onto the bed, listening. The worst part, I continued, I knew he loved me. That's what made it so hard to leave. How do you escape someone who genuinely believes they're saving you? I looked at Marco. Alessia knows you love her. That's not the question. The question is whether you can love her enough to let her stumble, let her build something that might fail, let her be ordinary. Marco's face crumpled. He sat heavily in the desk chair, putting his head in his hands. Every time she left a clue, I thought she was crying out for help. For rescue. What if I've been wrong this whole time? You haven't been wrong, I said gently. You've been scared. But Marco, what if the clues aren't breadcrumbs leading her back to you? What if they're breadcrumbs she's following herself, and she's inviting you to watch her become who she needs to be? Gianna moved to her husband's side, kneeling in front of him. I'm sorry I kept the clues from you. You're right, we're partners. I should have trusted you with the truth. And I'm sorry I made you feel like you couldn't, Marco said, his voice raw. He took her hands. I've been so focused on finding her that I forgot to ask what happens when we do. What if she looks at me and sees everything she's running from? Then we show her we've changed too, Gianna said firmly. We show her that we can love her without needing to control her story. They held each other, and I turned away to give them privacy, staring out at the bridge lights blurring through my own tears. My phone buzzed. Another text from an unknown number. I opened it, my heart stopping. Thank you for helping them understand. The lighthouse isn't where I am, it's where I learned to let go. The answer you need is in the place where I first learned to build. Tell them I'm sorry it's taking so long. Below the message was a photo, a university building I recognized immediately. The architecture building at Yale University, just 2 hours north in New Haven.
Marco.
Gianna, I showed them the phone. She sent another message. Marco read it, his expression shifting from pain to something like hope.
Yale.
Her first architecture studio class was there. She used to say that's when she fell in love with building. She's not running anymore, Gianna breathed. She's leading us somewhere specific. Or testing us, I said. Seeing if we'll chase her, or if we'll understand what she's really asking for. Marco stood, exhaustion and determination warring on his face. Then let's prove we're listening. Yale's architecture building stood like a fortress of glass and concrete on the New Haven campus, its modernist design stark against the Gothic revival structures surrounding it. Students hurried between classes, portfolios tucked under arms, energy drinks in hand. We'd arrived just after 9 in the morning. Gianna clutched the sketchbook from Boston, hoping someone might recognize Alessia's distinctive drawing style. Marco had barely spoken during the 2-hour drive, his jaw tight with tension. Where do we even start? I asked, staring at the maze of studios and classrooms. The dean's office, Marco said, heading for the entrance. But Gianna caught his arm.
Wait.
If we go through official channels, word might get back to her that we're here. She'll run again. Then what do you suggest? I spotted a bulletin board near the entrance, covered with flyers for critiques, exhibitions, and study groups. One poster caught my eye, a call for volunteers at a design workshop, signed by several teaching assistants. One name stood out, Luca Moretti. Look at this, I said, pointing to the signature.
Luca Moretti.
That name was on one of the sketches in Alessia's book. She wrote, "Thanks for the feedback, Elm," on the margin of a building design. Gianna flipped through the sketchbook, finding the page. You're right. Studio 3C, Fall 2019. They must have been in class together. If he was her friend, he might know where she is, Marco said, hope creeping into his voice. We found the department office. where a student worker directed us to the fabrication lab. Luca's probably there. He practically lives in that place. The fabrication lab was a cathedral of creation, 3D printers humming, laser cutters etching intricate patterns into wood, the smell of sawdust and hot plastic filling the air. In the back corner, a young man in his late 20s bent over a model, carefully gluing together miniature walls.
Luca Moretti.
I called out. He looked up, pushing safety glasses onto his forehead. Dark hair, olive skin, paint-stained hands. His eyes were kind but guarded. That's me. Can I help you? Gianna stepped forward, showing him the photo on her phone. We're looking for Alessia De Luca. We think you knew her. We're her family. The color drained from Luca's face. He set down his glue, carefully, deliberately. I wondered when you'd show up. You know where she is? Marco's voice was desperate. No, Luca pulled off his gloves. But I know why she left. And honestly, I'm not sure I should tell you. Please, Gianna whispered. We've been searching for 3 years. We just want to know she's okay. Luca studied them for a long moment, then gestured to a quiet corner away from the other students. We gathered around a work table covered with architectural models. Alessia and I met in our sophomore studio class, he began. She was the most talented person I'd ever met. Professors loved her, said she had the kind of instinctive understanding of space that couldn't be taught. He paused. But she was miserable. Why? I asked. Because nothing she did was ever just hers. Luca's voice was gentle but firm. Every project she turned in, every design she created, professors would say things like, living up to the De Luca legacy, or, your godfather must be so proud. She couldn't escape it.
Marco Flinched.
It got worse senior year, Luca continued. She won a major design competition, the Northeast Regional Student Architecture Award. Huge deal. National recognition. But when the press wrote about it, the headlines were all about her being Marco De Luca's goddaughter. Her design was barely mentioned. I remember that competition, Gianna said quietly. She seemed happy when she told us she won. She was at first, but then the articles came out. One of them literally said, De Luca's goddaughter proves talent runs in the family, like her achievement was somehow because of you. Luca looked at Marco. That's when she started pulling away. Did she talk to you about leaving? Marco asked. Not directly. But the last time I saw her, graduation day, she asked me something. Luca's expression grew somber. She said, if you could disappear and start over with a new name, would you? I thought she was being philosophical. 2 weeks later, she was gone. The weight of it settled over us. 3 years of mystery, distilled into this simple truth. Alessia hadn't been running from danger or trauma. She'd been running from being someone's goddaughter, someone's legacy, someone's pride. Where would she go? Gianna asked. If she wanted to build something completely her own. Luca hesitated, then pulled out his phone. She sent me an email 6 months ago. Just one line. I didn't respond because I thought she needed space. He showed us the screen. I'm finally building something that's just mine. Wish you could see it. Maybe someday. That's all. Marco's voice cracked. Nothing about where she is. The email metadata shows it was sent from a library computer in New Hampshire. Portsmouth, specifically. Luca looked apologetic. But that was 6 months ago. She could be anywhere by now. I thought about the pattern of clues. Always just enough to keep them searching, never enough to actually find her. What if she's still in Portsmouth? Why would she stay in one place? Marco asked. Because, I said slowly, maybe she's finally ready to be found. All these clues, the emails, the texts, she's been gradually leading you closer. Testing to see if you'd understand. And now I looked at the email again. She says she's building something. Past tense would be built. She's actively working on something. Gianna grabbed Marco's hand. A project. She's working on an actual building project.
Luca nodded slowly.
There's a historic preservation initiative in Portsmouth. They're restoring old waterfront buildings, turning them into community spaces. It's the kind of work Alessia always dreamed about, meaningful, hands-on, making history come alive. He met Marco's eyes. If she's anywhere, she's there. Marco stood abruptly, emotion overwhelming him. Thank you. For protecting her. For being her friend when we couldn't be. Mr. DeLuca. Luca called as we turned to leave. When you find her, if you find her, please don't make her choose between her identity and your love. She shouldn't have to lose one to keep the other. The words followed us out of the building, into the cold November air, all the way to the car. Portsmouth was 3 hours north. We drove in silence, each of us wondering if this would be the end of the chase, or just another clue in an endless maze. Portsmouth, New Hampshire, was a postcard come to life. Colonial brick buildings lining cobblestone streets, church steeples piercing a gray November sky, and the smell of salt water mixed with wood smoke from cafe fireplaces. The historic waterfront district stretched along the Piscataqua River, where old warehouses were being transformed into galleries, shops, and community centers. We parked near Prescott Park and started walking, showing Alessia's photo to anyone who would look. Most people shook their heads politely. But then, at a small coffee shop called The Breaking Wave, the barista's eyes lit up with recognition.
Oh.
Alex. She was a woman in her 60s with silver hair and kind eyes. She came in here almost every morning for months, always ordered a black coffee and sat by the window, sketching. My heart leapt. Alex. That's what she told us her name was. Alex Morrison, the barista smiled. Sweet girl. Quiet. She'd sit for hours working on architectural drawings. Sometimes she'd show me what she was working on. Beautiful stuff, really detailed. Is she still coming in? Gianna asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The barista's smile faded.
No, honey.
She stopped about 2 weeks ago. Just stopped showing up one day. I was worried something happened to her. Marco gripped the counter. Did she say where she was staying? Where she was working? The Prescott Building Restoration Project, that big warehouse conversion down by the water. She was part of the crew. Talked about it like it was the most important thing in the world. The barista pointed out the window. 3 blocks that way, can't miss it. Red brick building with scaffolding. We thanked her and hurried out, following her directions. The Prescott Building loomed ahead, 4 stories of 19th century brick, surrounded by construction equipment and scaffolding. A sign out front read, Historic Preservation Project, Community Arts Center, opening spring 2024. A construction worker in a hard hat was checking measurements near the entrance. Marco approached him, slightly breathless. Excuse me, we're looking for someone who worked here. Alessia, or she might have gone by Alex Morrison. The man straightened, his expression shifting to something between recognition and sadness. Alex. Yeah, I remember her. She was with us for about 5 months. Worked harder than anyone I've ever seen. First one here in the morning, last one to leave. Worked? Gianna caught the past tense. She's not here anymore? Left suddenly maybe 10, 12 days ago. We came in one Monday morning, and her tools were all packed up neat, her work area cleaned out. Boss found a note saying she had to leave for personal reasons. He rubbed his neck. Shame, really. She was restoring the original moldings on the 3rd floor. Intricate stuff. Took real talent. Did anyone see her go? Did she say anything to anyone? I pressed. My buddy Carlos talked to her that last Friday. Said she got a phone call during lunch break, went real pale, started crying. When he asked if she was okay, she said something like, they're getting too close. I thought I had more time. The words hit like ice water. Marco's face went ashen. They, Gianna repeated. She meant us. The construction worker looked uncomfortable. Look, I don't know what's going on with you folks, but Alex seemed scared. Not of someone hurting her. More like scared of losing something she'd built. Does that make sense? Perfect sense, I said quietly. Did she leave anything behind? Any drawings, any clues about where she might have gone? The boss might know. He's inside, 3rd floor, checking the restoration work Alex left unfinished. He handed Marco a spare hard hat. You'll need these to go up. We climbed the temporary stairs to the third floor, our footsteps echoing in the gutted building. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating dust motes and the skeleton of what would become the art center. In the far corner, a man in his 50s studied ornate ceiling moldings. "Mr. Patterson?" Marco called out. The man turned, wiping plaster dust from his hands. "Yes. We're looking for Alex Morrison. We understand she worked for you." Patterson's expression grew guarded. "Family?" "Something like that," Gianna said.
Please.
"We've been searching for her for a long time." Patterson studied them, then sighed. "She was remarkable. Restored these moldings by hand." He gestured to the intricate plasterwork above us, matched the original 1880s patterns perfectly. It was like watching history come alive through her hands. "Why did she leave?" Marco asked. "I don't know the whole story, but that last week, she seemed anxious. Kept looking over her shoulder, checking her phone like she was waiting for bad news." Patterson walked to a workbench in the corner. "She left this for me. Said if anyone came asking about Alessia DeLuca, not Alex Morrison but Alessia, I should give it to them." He handed Marco a sealed envelope. Marco's hands shook as he opened it. Inside was a letter in Alessia's handwriting and a small watercolor painting of a lighthouse, the same one from the sketch, but this time painted with careful detail. Marco read aloud, his voice breaking. "Marco and Gianna, if you're reading this, you've followed every clue I left. You've traveled hundreds of miles, talked to strangers, pieced together a puzzle I made deliberately difficult. I need you to understand. I didn't leave because I don't love you. I left because I loved you so much I couldn't figure out who I was separate from you." The DeLuca name opened every door for me, but it also closed the one door I needed most. The door to discovering my own strength, my own failures, my own victories. I needed to know if I could create something meaningful using just my hands and my mind, not your connections, not your reputation, not your protection. This building, the Prescott, was mine. For 5 months, I was just Alex, just a restoration worker with talent and dedication. And I proved to myself that I could build something beautiful. But I'm not ready to come home yet.
I need one more step.
One more place where I can stand on my own before I can stand beside you as an equal, not as someone you raised. Please stop looking for me. Not forever, just for now. When I'm ready, I promise I'll come home. Trust me to find my way back. I love you both.
More than you know.
Alessia. The letter fluttered from Marco's hands. He stood frozen, tears streaming down his face. Gianna picked up the watercolor, turning it over. On the back was written, "Where I learned to let go, White Mountain, New Hampshire."
Don't follow me there.
Let me come to you. We sat in the car outside the Prescott building for nearly an hour. Nobody spoke. Marco stared at Alessia's letter like it might suddenly reveal different words. Gianna held the watercolor painting, tears dripping onto the paper. She asked us to stop. Marco finally said, his voice hollow. She explicitly asked us to stop looking. "I know," Gianna whispered. Then we stop. He folded the letter carefully, precisely, like he was putting away something precious and painful. We go home. We wait. We let her come to us. "Marco." "No," his voice cracked. "I've spent 3 years thinking I knew what she needed. Thinking I could fix this by finding her, by showing her how much we love her. But Luca was right.
You were right.
I'm making her choose between herself and us. And that's not love. That's possession." Gianna reached for his hand. "We can't just pretend she doesn't exist. I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting we finally listen to what she's been trying to tell us all along." Marco looked at me in the rearview mirror. "Mira, thank you for helping us get this far. But I think it's time we let Alessia go." Something about his words felt wrong. Not bad exactly, but incomplete. I pulled out my phone, scrolling back through the photos I'd taken of all the clues, the postcards, the sketchbook, the drawings, the letter. Each one carefully crafted, deliberately placed. "Wait," I said. Can I see the watercolor again? Gianna handed it back to me. I studied it under the car's dome light, turning it this way and that. The lighthouse stood against a sunset, waves crashing against rocks. But there was something about the painting that nagged at me. Look at the brushstrokes, I said. They're different from her pencil sketches. More confident, more finished. So? Marco asked. So every other clue has been rough, quick, like she was leaving them in a hurry. But this, I pointed to the careful detail. This took time. Hours, maybe days. She planned this 1 inch. Gianna leaned over the seat to look. What are you saying? I pulled out the sketchbook from Boston, flipping to the lighthouse drawing. This sketch was done from memory, quick lines, basic shapes. But the watercolor is painted from observation. She was actually there at this lighthouse, recently enough to paint it in detail.
White Mountain, Marco said.
That's what she wrote on the back. But White Mountain is a region, not a specific place. There are dozens of towns, hundreds of trails. I zoomed in on the photo of the watercolor on my phone, studying every detail. There has to be something that tells us exactly where.
Then I saw it.
In the bottom right corner, barely visible in the painted rocks, were letters formed by the shadows and highlights. You'd miss them if you weren't looking. I grabbed a pen from the cup holder and traced them on a napkin. P.H.L. P.H.L., I said. Those initials are hidden in the painting. Marco took the watercolor, holding it up to the light. I see it. But what does it mean? I was already searching on my phone. Portsmouth Harbor Lighthouse? No, that's here. Portland Head Light in Maine? No, I scrolled through lighthouse listings.
Wait.
Point of Hope Light. It's a small lighthouse in the White Mountains near Lake Winnipesaukee. There's a retreat center there, Point of Hope Retreat. Gianna's breath caught. A retreat. Somewhere quiet, away from everything. She's not just visiting, I said, pieces clicking together. She's staying there. Look at the letter again. One more step. One more place where I can stand on my own. A retreat is where people go to find themselves. Marco's jaw clenched. And she explicitly told us not to follow her there. She did, I agreed. But think about why she left this painting. Why she took the time to make it so detailed, to hide her location in it. If she truly wanted us to stop, she would have just said it in the letter and left nothing else. Then why tell us not to come? Gianna asked. Because she needs to know you'll respect her boundaries even when you know where she is. I looked between them. She's testing you one last time. Can you know where she is and not storm in to rescue her? Can you trust her to come home when she's ready? The car fell silent again. Through the windshield, construction workers were closing up the Prescott building for the day, covering equipment with tarps, securing the site. Alessia's unfinished work would wait for someone else to complete it, or perhaps remain unfinished forever. What if we go there and she runs again? Marco asked quietly. What if showing up proves we haven't learned anything? Then you don't show up, I said. You go to the retreat, you ask to leave her a message, and you go home. You prove you can be close without suffocating. You prove you trust her timeline, not yours. Gianna wiped her eyes. A message saying what? That you're ready when she is. That you'll wait forever if that's what she needs. That you love her enough to let her go. I handed the watercolor back. But you also tell her the truth, that you'll always be here. That coming home doesn't mean giving up who she's become, that there's room for both the girl you raised and the woman she's becoming. Marco stared at the painting for a long time. Finally, he started the car. Where are we going? Gianna asked. To find a hotel. Tomorrow morning, we drive to Point of Hope Retreat. He met my eyes in the mirror. But we do it your way, Mira. We leave a message and then we go home. We let her decide. As we pulled away from the Prescott building, I looked back at the third-floor windows where Alessia had spent 5 months building something that was entirely hers. The sunset painted the old brick gold and amber. She was so close now, just 2 hours north. But the question wasn't whether we could find her anymore. It was whether we could find her and still let her go. Point of Hope Retreat sat nestled in the White Mountains like a secret. We'd driven 2 hours north from Portsmouth, winding through forests ablaze with the last colors of autumn, deep reds and burnt oranges against evergreen pines. The retreat appeared suddenly around a bend, a cluster of wooden cabins surrounding a main lodge, all overlooking Lake Winnipesaukee crystalline waters. It was beautiful, peaceful, the kind of place where someone could finally breathe. Marco pulled into the gravel parking lot and cut the engine. None of us moved. I don't know if I can do this, he admitted, his hands still gripping the steering wheel. Be this close and not see her. You can, Gianna said softly. We both can, because that's what she needs from us. I climbed out first, giving them a moment. The mountain air was sharp and clean, carrying the scent of pine and wood smoke. Through the trees, I could see the lighthouse from Alessia's painting, Point of Hope Light, a modest white tower standing sentinel over the rocky shore. She'd been here, maybe was still here, so close I could probably throw a stone and hit her cabin. Marco and Gianna joined me, and together we walked to the main lodge. Inside, it was warm and rustic, exposed beams, a stone fireplace crackling with flames, comfortable furniture arranged in conversation clusters. A woman in her 40s sat at the reception desk, her smile welcoming but professional. Good afternoon. Checking in? Actually, Gianna said, her voice remarkably steady, we're here to leave a message for someone who's staying here. Her name is Alessia DeLuca, or she might be registered under Alex Morrison. The woman's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in her eyes. Recognition. We respect our guests' privacy at Point of Hope. I can't confirm or deny. We know she's here, Marco interrupted, then caught himself. He took a breath, softening his tone.
I'm sorry.
We're not trying to intrude. We need her to know something. And then we'll leave. The woman studied him for a long moment. Your family, it wasn't a question.
Her godfather, Marco said.
I raised her after her parents died. And you're the people she's been running from again, not a question. The woman's gaze was sharp but not unkind. She talks about you sometimes. In group sessions. Says she's working on forgiveness, not forgiving you, but forgiving herself for needing distance. Gianna's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a sob. Is she? Marco's voice broke. Is she okay? She's healing, the woman said simply. But healing takes time and it takes space. She's not ready for a reunion. We know, I said, stepping forward. That's why we're not asking to see her. We just want to leave her something. A message that tells her we understand now. The woman considered this, then reached under the desk and pulled out a small wooden box and paper. You can write to her. I'll make sure she gets it when she's ready. Some of our guests aren't ready to receive messages right away. It might be days or weeks or however long it takes, Marco said firmly. We'll wait. The woman nodded, handing him the paper and a pen. You can use that table by the window. Take your time. We moved to the window table, overlooking the lake and the lighthouse. Marco sat down, staring at the blank paper. His hand trembled as he lifted the pen. I don't know what to say, he whispered. How do you summarize 3 years of searching, 3 years of regret, in a letter? You start with the truth, Gianna said, sitting beside him. Tell her what you should have said that last night, what you should have asked instead of dismissing her. Marco nodded and began to write. His handwriting was careful, each word chosen deliberately. I moved away to give them privacy, standing by the fireplace, watching flames dance across logs. 20 minutes passed. Maybe 30. Finally, Marco set down the pen. Gianna read what he'd written, tears streaming down her face. She added a few lines of her own at the bottom, then they folded the letter together and placed it in the wooden box. Do you want to add anything? Gianna asked me. I shook my head. This is between you and her. But I pulled out a small piece of paper from my purse, writing quickly. Tell her something from me, I wrote. You're braver than you know. Coming home doesn't mean going backward. Mira. I added it to the box, and Marco carried it to the reception desk like he was carrying something sacred. "Please," he said to the woman.
Tell her.
"Tell her we're not disappearing from her life. We're just giving her the space to live it." The woman took the box. "I will. And for what it's worth, what you're doing right now, leaving instead of pushing, that takes real love." As we turned to go, a movement caught my eye through the window. A figure walking along the lake path, sketchbook tucked under one arm. Dark curly hair, slender build, moving with purpose and peace. Alessia. My breath caught. I saw Gianna freeze, saw Marco's entire body tense. We all saw her, maybe 50 yards away, completely unaware of our presence. Every instinct screamed to call out, to run to her, to bridge the distance. But Marco stood perfectly still. Tears streamed down his face, but his feet didn't move. Gianna gripped his hand so hard her knuckles went white, but she stayed rooted. "She looks happy," Gianna whispered. "She looks free," Marco corrected, his voice breaking. We watched until Alessia rounded a bend in the path and disappeared into the trees. Then, without a word, Marco turned toward the door. "Wait," the receptionist called out. We turned. She held up a small envelope. "She left this yesterday. Said if a man named Marco and a woman named Gianna ever showed up, I should give it to them. But only if they were leaving, not staying." Marco's hands shook as he took the envelope. He didn't open it until we were back in the car, the retreat shrinking in the rearview mirror. Inside was a single sentence in Alessia's handwriting. "Thank you for loving me enough to let me go. I'm almost ready to come home. Give me until spring." Below it, a date, April 15th. 5 months away. Marco clutched the note like a lifeline and finally, after 3 years of desperate searching, he let himself cry. 5 months is both an eternity and an instant when you're counting down to something that could heal you or break you all over again. November bled into December. Marco and Gianna returned to Newport, to the restaurant, to their routines. But everything had changed. I watched them from my Waitress station, saw how they moved differently now, lighter somehow, despite the waiting. Marco stopped checking his phone every 5 minutes. Gianna stopped collecting clues, stopped searching for breadcrumbs that no longer needed to be found. They'd learned to sit with uncertainty, to trust a timeline that wasn't theirs to control. I kept working at Maria Blue, but our relationship had shifted. I wasn't just an employee anymore. I'd become something like family, the person who'd helped them understand what they'd been too close to see.
Christmas came.
They invited me to their home, a beautiful colonial on Ocean Drive with windows overlooking the Atlantic. Over dinner, Gianna showed me the letter they'd written to Alessia, the one they'd left at the retreat. "Dear Alessia, you asked me once if I was proud of you, if I thought you'd accomplished anything on your own. I gave you the wrong answer. I should have asked why you were questioning it, should have listened instead of dismissing your fears. The truth is, I've always been proud of you. But I was proud of the wrong things. I was proud when professors praised you, when you won awards, when your name appeared in prestigious programs. I thought those achievements proved I'd raised you well. What I failed to see was that you needed to fail. You needed to struggle, to build something that might collapse, to discover your strength through adversity, not through the advantages my name provided. I'm proud now of something different, your courage to walk away from everything comfortable and safe to find yourself. Your determination to build something entirely your own. Your strength to set boundaries even with people you love. That's real accomplishment. Not the awards. Not the accolades.
You.
Just you, stripped of everything except your talent and will. I'm sorry it took me 3 years and hundreds of miles to understand this. I'm sorry I made you run to find yourself. If you come home in April, if you choose to come home, you won't be coming back to the life you left. You'll be coming back to parents who finally understand that loving you means celebrating who you are, not who we hoped you'd be. We'll be here, whenever you're ready. Marco. Below it, Gianna had added. And Alessia, If you choose not to come home in April, if you need more time or decide to build your life somewhere else entirely, that's okay too. We'll miss you. We'll always miss you. But we'll love you from whatever distance you need. You're not obligated to return just because you promised a date. Promises can change. People can change. We have. Gianna. I wiped tears from my eyes as I finished reading. Did she respond? No, Marco said. And we're not expecting her to. April 15th is enough. January brought bitter cold and snow that transformed Newport into something from a Courier and Ives print. I spent my days off helping Marco and Gianna prepare Alessia's old room, not renovating it, but updating it gently. Fresh paint in the soft gray she'd always loved. New curtains. A drafting table by the window for when she wanted to work at home. If she comes home, Gianna would say. When, Marco would correct gently. When she comes home. February was the hardest month. The waiting stretched thin like worn elastic, and doubt crept in. What if April 15th came and went with no word? What if Alessia had changed her mind? What if? Stop, I told them one night over coffee at the restaurant after closing. You're spiraling. She gave you a date. Trust it. But what if? Gianna started. No what ifs. You've spent 3 years in what ifs. Now you're in what is. A daughter who asked for time, parents who gave it to her, and a specific date circled on the calendar. That's not nothing. That's everything. March arrived with the first hints of spring, crocuses pushing through melting snow, days growing longer, the promise of renewal in the air. Marco became obsessive about the restaurant, ensuring everything was perfect. New menu items, renovated patio furniture, fresh flowers on every table. You're nesting, I teased him one afternoon. He paused, setting down a stack of menus. I want her to see that we've changed too, that we've been building something better while she was gone. The first week of April felt like standing on a cliff's edge. Every phone ring made them jump. Every car in the parking lot might be hers. The tension was unbearable and sweet at the same time. April 14th arrived. The day before. I found Gianna sitting alone in the restaurant's empty dining room at dawn, staring at table 12, the table where this whole journey had started 6 months ago when I'd seen her bracelet, when I'd found that first postcard. What if she doesn't come? Gianna whispered. What if we did everything right and it still isn't enough?
I sat beside her.
Then you'll have still done everything right, and that will matter, even if she needs more time. But, Gianna? I took her hand. She's coming. I know it. How can you be so sure? Because she's been leaving you breadcrumbs for 3 years. She never stopped wanting to be found. She just needed to be ready to be seen. And now she is. That night, none of us slept. Marco and Gianna sat in their living room, watching the hours tick by. I stayed with them, none of us speaking much, just being present for whatever the morning would bring. At midnight, April 15th officially began. Somewhere out there, Alessia was making her own decision, to come home or to ask for more time. All we could do was wait for sunrise and trust that love, finally understood correctly, would be enough. April 15th dawned clear and bright, the kind of spring morning that felt like a promise. Marco and Gianna opened the restaurant at 11, moving through their routines with mechanical precision. Neither of them said what we were all thinking. What if she doesn't come? I worked my shift, serving lunch customers, refilling water glasses, pretending my heart wasn't hammering every time the door opened. Table 12 sat empty, reserved, though for what? None of us would say out loud. 1 o'clock passed. Then 2. Then 3. By 4 o'clock, Gianna had retreated to the office. I found her sitting at the desk, staring at nothing, her bracelet, Alessia's bracelet, turned so the names showed clearly. She's not coming, Gianna whispered. The day isn't over. Mira, it's been 5 months. 5 months of hoping, of preparing, of believing. Her voice cracked. What if we were wrong? What if we misunderstood, and she needs more time, and we just wasted all this hope? Mrs. DeLuca? One of the hostesses appeared in the doorway, her eyes wide. "There's someone here." At table 12-inch. Time stopped. Gianna stood so fast her chair toppled backward. We actually ran through the kitchen and into the dining room. There, sitting at table 12 with the evening sun streaming through the windows behind her, was Alessia. She looked different than her photos. Older, yes, she was almost 28 now, but also more solid, more present. Her dark curls were pulled back in a loose braid. She wore simple jeans and a white button-down, charcoal smudges on her fingers like she'd been sketching. And on her face, an expression of terrified hope. Marco emerged from the wine cellar, froze when he saw her. The bottle in his hand slipped, but he caught it just in time. For a moment, nobody moved. 3 years of distance compressed into this single, breathless instant. Then Alessia stood.
Eat.
That one word, small, tentative, enormous, broke the spell. "Hi," Marco managed, his voice strangled. Gianna pressed her hand to her mouth, tears already streaming. "I know I'm cutting it close," Alessia said, glancing at her watch. "It's 4:47. I gave myself until midnight, but I figured." She took a shaky breath. "I figured if I was going to do this, I should do it when I was brave, not when I was desperate." "You came," Gianna whispered. "I almost didn't. I sat in my car in the parking lot for 2 hours," Alessia's hands twisted together. "Kept thinking about all the ways this could go wrong, all the reasons I should ask for more time. But then I remembered something my therapist said. You can't heal what you won't face." Marco took a step closer, just one. "We got your note. At the retreat. And we left you a letter. Did you read it?" "Every word. About 100 times," Alessia's eyes shimmered. "You said you were proud of me. For leaving. For finding myself. Do you still mean that?" "Every word," Marco echoed, his voice breaking. "Every single word. Because I need you to understand something," Alessia straightened, gathering courage. "I didn't leave because you were bad parents. You were amazing. You gave me everything. That was the problem. I never learned to give myself anything. Every success felt like yours. Every achievement felt like proof of your legacy, not my capability." "We know," Gianna said softly. "We understand now. Do you?" Alessia's voice sharpened, not with anger, but with urgency. "Because I need this to be different. If I come home, and I want to come home, I need you to let me fail sometimes. Let me take jobs you wouldn't choose. Let me make questionable decisions and figure them out myself. Let me be ordinary when I need to be." "Yes," Marco moved closer, then stopped, respecting the space between them. "Yes to all of it. We won't be perfect at it. We'll probably mess up, want to interfere, struggle to hold back, but we'll try. We'll keep trying. And if we do interfere," Gianna added, "you have permission to call us out. To set boundaries. To leave again if you need to. Though God, I hope you don't need to." Alessia's composure cracked. "I missed you so much. Every single day. But I had to miss you. I had to feel the distance to know what I was coming back to." "What are you coming back to?" I asked quietly from where I stood near the kitchen door. Alessia looked at me, this stranger who'd somehow become part of her story. To a family. Not to be someone's goddaughter or someone's legacy. Just to be their daughter. If that's okay. Marco closed the distance in 3 strides and wrapped his arms around her. She collapsed into him, sobbing. Gianna joined them, and the 3 of them stood there, holding each other like they were learning how to fit together again. I turned away to give them privacy, but Alessia called out.
"Wait.
You're Mira, right? The waitress who found my postcard." "That's me." "Thank you," her voice was thick with emotion. "For helping them understand. For being what I couldn't be. Honest without anger, clear without accusation." "You were always honest," I said. "They just needed help learning your language." The restaurant staff had gathered at the edges of the room, watching this reunion. Someone was crying, Sarah, the head waitress who'd warned me about table 12 on my first day. How far we'd all come from that initial fear. As the sun set over Newport Harbor, painting the dining room in shades of gold and amber, Alessia sat down at table 12. Marco and Gianna sat across from her, not beside her, giving her space, and they began to talk. Really talk. About the 3 years apart, about what came next, about how to build something new from the foundation of what was broken. I brought them coffee and quietly left the carafe. This conversation would take hours, maybe days, maybe years. But they were finally having it. Outside, the ocean crashed against the rocks, eternal and patient. Inside, a family learned to love each other in a new language, one that made room for distance, for boundaries, for the hard-won independence that makes true connection possible. Every waitress had feared table 12. But tonight, it held only healing, hope, and the quiet beginning of something none of us had dared to believe possible. Home, redefined. Love, released and reclaimed. And a name, Alessia, no longer hidden, but finally, truthfully, spoken aloud. The end.